Delivery driver found and added me on Facebook. I think this counts because it's out of the realm of normalcy and slightly stalkerish, and as a former delivery driver myself, I want to see if anyone has similar stories. When I was in my early 20s, I was very mentally unstable. Shout out 6 years since my last psych hospitalization, and being the most functional and stable I've ever been in my entire life, lonely, and desperate for friends. I've struggled with binge eating, and it was particularly bad at that time with a lot of delivery and late night fast food binges. One night that I order pizza, this man delivers it. Maybe in his mid to late 30s or early 40s, and I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. We don't have any particularly engaging conversation. It was a normal friendly pizza delivery driver conversation. He may have complimented me on my piercings or hair at the time, or a shirt. This was a decade ago, so I don't really remember. I do know there was nothing that indicated I wanted to be friends, and that this was simply a customer/driver interaction. I think it was a day or so later and he adds me on Facebook. I want to emphasize that this was days later, meaning he took my information home or noted it somewhere. It took me a minute to figure out who he was. I'm autistic and have a hard time recognizing faces, especially putting faces to names, and realized he found me based off of my order information. Being unstable, lonely, and desperate for friends, and also living life by, I make decisions based on whether or not it will make a good story. Definitely do not do that anymore. I accepted the friend request. He left some creepy, typical overly sexual compliments on some Facebook photos, but we never met or talked or anything ever again, and I think I deleted him a few months later. I don't remember exactly, but I definitely realized, okay, this is weird. Delivery driver that was almost twice my age at the time, and decided, after a less than 10-minute interaction, to find me on Facebook days later. Let's never meet again, and I hope you didn't do this to anyone else. Or if you did, that they were smarter and in a better place than me to get your creep vibes and decline. I probably should have reported it to the company, but, you know, hindsight 20/20ths. I also want to note that I've had delivery drivers creepily try to flirt with me since, and it's the worst. Please let me eat my greasy food in peace. As a former driver, unless you have a dog, I could always forgive a bad tip if they let me pet their dog. Let's keep this brief, courteous, and remember to tip your drivers. The creepy delivery driver I see each week. So I work at a multi-billion-dollar retail chain, and besides my main other department, which is also in the back room, there is a second department I'm cross-trained in that I work in for a couple of hours each morning and every Saturday accepting deliveries. Now I'm of average build, not overweight, but not as slender as I used to be. I have kids, so I have a bit of a mommy tummy that I've fought to get rid of for years. I think I look average, but used to get a lot of attention back in the day from young men. Around when I was in my 20s. I'm now in my mid-30s, and though I look a little younger, it's not by as much as it used to be. These days the only guys eyeing me up are 10 years older than me, and yeah, usually not attractive either. I'm married and not looking for a replacement either. I love my husband. There's a good variety of delivery drivers who deliver to my store, and I know many of the regulars by name. Every now and then there's a new driver or a substitute driver for one of the companies, but for the most part it's the same people. So there's a regular driver who comes in every Saturday to deliver milk. We'll call him Mike. He's mid-50s and nearing retirement age for the company he works for. He's friendly and cheerful and always greets everyone happily. He also loves making jokes. He even does the shave and a haircut 2 bits knock on our bay door when he arrives. I've always thought he was pretty cool, and even said he was my favorite delivery driver since he's so nice. I think he may have gotten the wrong idea though. When I first started there, the other lady who used to substitute in that department warned me that Mike was a terrible flirt and that he liked to try to get with all the ladies. I kinda shrugged it off. I didn't think it was a big deal. Over the past year he said that I'm his favorite receiving person and that I'm beautiful. He has been very flirty and even asked me out on lunch dates. I have always declined and told him I'm married. This hasn't deterred him in the least. He could care less about that. Mike has gotten friendly enough to even show me pictures and videos of trips he's been on and whatnot. Last week he showed me a video of the drive up his driveway and views around his 300 acres of land. I thought that was rather odd though. I mean, why show someone your driveway all of a sudden and show off your land? What was his goal in this? He started calling me a nickname recently too, which no one had ever really called me, as it was something only my creeper dad ever called me. Even my husband knows to steer clear of that nickname because it triggers me. It's an obvious nickname for my name, but no one uses it. Kinda like Mike is a nickname for Michael or Kate for Caitlin. Well, yesterday just before he left he said something I wasn't expecting. Mike asked me if he could shrink wrap me and take me with him. I gave him a firm and immediate no. This immediately made me think of a murder that happened in my area before I moved out here, where a woman was saran wrapped by her boyfriend and dumped naked and saran wrapped on the side of the highway. The police were never able to connect the guy to the murder, though the locals knew he had to be the one who did it, and I was told he left the area after that. The more I think of his question, the more creeped out I get. I wonder if I should report it to management or just tell him to cut the crap out the next time I see him as a warning. My company prefers people to tell harassers to stop before reporting an issue, but I'm not sure if this falls into that category or is creepy enough to be something I should just report right away. What do you guys think? All I know is I'm really uncomfortable having to see him again next Saturday when he delivers again. Update: I took my manager aside and told her the situation, and she agreed that it definitely wasn't appropriate and that she wants a written statement from me on the matter. So we'll see how it's handled. If he stops delivering to my store or stops being creepy, I'll know it's been handled properly. Update: I talked to my assistant manager on Friday and she said that it was being handled by ethics. So not at the store level. I told her I was thinking of having my supervisor shadow me while the guy was there on Saturday. Saturday morning came though, and I felt like crap and really didn't want to have to deal with him on top of already feeling tired. So I just called out. Some poor support manager had to deal with him instead. I don't know how long it will take them to address the issue, but I hope it's soon. Update: so my case is back to being investigated at store level again. Did the statement and answered questions and whatnot. Won't know anything for a while, I'm guessing. Asked for any guarantees that they could keep me safe. None were given. They just said they're looking into it and that if I have further issues, to notify them. Oh yeah, that makes me feel so much safer. Totally. Update: today I was anxious to go to work as I know it's the day that creepy guy delivers milk. The closer it got to 7:30 a.m., the more nervous I got. Just before 7:30 a.m. I went down to my other work area on the opposite side of the back room. It's a huge store, so it's approximately 600 feet away or so. When I got down there I discovered that my supervisor wasn't there as I had feared, and my anxiety only grew. When I got back to my area there were only a few merchandisers milling about, loading up their products onto carts and whatnot. I didn't see any other managers, including the one I had spoken to earlier in the day to confirm that he would be present and nearby to give me some sense of security. In a moment of desperation I thought back to what my coworker had told me just yesterday, and that was to ask a female coworker to stay with me and look out for me. So I asked one and she said yes. We waited in the back room, distracting ourselves with meaningless tasks to pass the time. Before I knew it, a half hour went by, then an hour, and then another half hour. No milk. I went to lunch and thanked my coworker for humoring me and staying nearby. After lunch I checked to see if the milk ever came, but it hadn't. I was pretty happy I didn't have to see him for another week at least. Then later I was pulled into the office at the end of my shift. The manager then told me that as of today that man, Mike, is no longer permitted in our store. He can't deliver there or even shop there. So now they have to rearrange our delivery schedule for milk. But I honestly was just so relieved. I told the manager that I felt very relieved and thanked him for letting me know. It's like a weight has finally been lifted off my chest. So, creepy delivery guy that used to deliver milk at my store, may we never meet again. The delivery driver who wouldn't leave. At the time I, 24F, had the entire lower/main floor unit I lived in to myself. I used to bartend/manage a nightclub a few blocks away and would usually get home around 4 a.m. This night I had just finished a 12-hour shift, was exhausted and hungry, so I decided to order some food. I place the order, get my joint rolled and ready for when the food arrives, put on a movie and wait. Eventually, I hear the doorbell ring, and being alone and it being late at night, I waited to get the photo sent to the delivery app to verify my food was at the door, and so I didn't have to make small talk with the driver, as post-COVID I still kept the option for contactless delivery. 3 to 5 minutes pass, I see the photo of my food on the doorstep and decide to get up and go get it. My bedroom window had 5 large windows that gave my full view of the path along the house, the main street in front, our garbage area, and the area right in front of our unit store. The driver is still out there, and now he's texting me to come out and get my food. I tell him he left it in a perfect spot, I'll be out shortly to get it, and thanks for delivering it. At this point I'm waiting for him to go, because even though marijuana is legal here, people can still be judgmental, and I don't want to go out in my PJs to collect my food, smoke, and see a human after working all night. He doesn't leave. He keeps texting me to come outside. Now I can hear him talking to another male voice, although my window view obscures anyone else that might be out there. The food in the photo was right against my door, and I can see him edging it away and off to the side, so I'd have to fully step out and around a small corner to collect it. I keep texting him telling him it's in a perfect spot. I'm glad he followed the instructions. I'll be out shortly. He starts banging on my front door, still occasionally talking to this other male voice. My food is now further away from the door. He won't stop banging and telling me to come outside. Eventually, I tell him I set delivery as no contact as I have COVID, a lie, and don't want to get anyone sick. After I saw he'd read my message on the app, he put my food back by the front door and walked out of there through the back parking lot. Initially he came in through the front of the house. Something about this entire encounter felt so off. I waited about 15 minutes until I couldn't see anyone or hear anyone, quickly opened the door and grabbed my food. The whole ordeal lasted about an hour. My food was nice and cold, the joint was out away for another day, and my heart was racing for the rest of the night. So, delivery man who would not take the hint and go away, and to his friend, let's not meet. Uber Eats delivery driver possibly using multiple accounts tried to break into my home upon arriving. For some context, I live in a major city and currently don't do a lot of driving due to ongoing issues with my car. The pandemic has made me turn to more delivery apps in general, so the other day around 1 p.m. I decided to order some lunch after doing a lot of cleaning. I placed the Uber Eats order and found something to watch while I waited for the food. Within a few minutes, a driver accepted the order, and I noticed right away that the driver, Anthony, was on a bike, didn't have a profile picture, or any deliveries on record. At first, I wasn't alarmed at all. I was almost amused. Like, oh wow, guess I'm this person's first ever customer. But then a full 30 minutes passes with no driver movement on the app, and at this point I think maybe something is glitching out or the driver is stuck. I contact support via the chat option, and they ended up assigning a new driver because they couldn't reach the first one. Odd, but whatever. Now is when it starts getting a little weirder. The new driver assigned is in the exact same spot as the original driver was. They are also on a bike, also have no profile picture, and have no prior deliveries as well, and this driver's name was Lori. I let another 20 minutes pass with no driver movement before I message them myself and say, "Hi there. Are there any issues with the order?" The app shows that the driver saw the message, but no response. All this time I'm checking to see if Uber Eats is maybe experiencing issues, none that I could find, and at this point, while I'm definitely weirded out, I'm mostly just hungry, so I contact support again to request some assistance. They reassign the driver again and apologize for the inconvenience. Same deal, they also tried to contact the driver with no response. Finally, the third driver assigned is the exact same scenario, same spot, on a bike, no profile picture, no prior deliveries. Only this time, the name is Robert, and before I can react and go about canceling the order at this point because I'm tired of dealing with this, he suddenly has my food and immediately messages me the following: "Hello. Have you our food? What's your phone number?" And I respond right away with, "I'm not super comfortable giving my phone number out when you can just message me here," and he responded again with, "What's your number? Be there in 10. How old are you?" And at this point the alarm bells are going off and I contact support immediately to have the order cancelled and get further assistance. I get connected to Uber's safety team, who informs me that the order has been cancelled, I'll be refunded, and started taking down the details of the strange interactions. As I'm giving the woman on the phone the info she needs, I'm starting to calm down, thinking this was just some creep or something, and that's what I hear a man's voice at the front door. Miss Metal Gear 42069, I have your footage, and I can't even describe the chill that went down my spine because of the way he said it. Making things even worse, the Uber safety woman on the phone with me heard him as well and goes, "Is that him? We canceled the order." I poked my head around the door. Main heavy door was open, metal screen door was closed/locked but allowed us to see each other, to get a look at him, and when he saw me on the phone he went from smiling to looking furious. He suddenly got right up against the door and kept asking who I was on the phone with, and at this point I've started asking him to please leave because he's making me uncomfortable and he's getting more and more angry. And at this point starts pounding on my door and grabbing the doorknob while shouting to be let in. The woman on the phone is asking if I'm okay. The man is still shouting, so basically I'm in full meltdown mode at this point and hurriedly close the heavy door to lock it. The man is becoming borderline belligerent as he kicks my door and the woman tells me to call the police. He ended up walking away from my house about a minute after that and back up to the sidewalk, and for a moment I thought he fucked off, so I finished my conversation with the Uber safety woman so she could submit the report. Once she submitted it, I called the police and told them what happened. They weren't incredibly helpful at first since he didn't actually break in or put his hands on me, and they told me if he came back to call again and they would send an officer out. I did end up having to call them again and give a full report description of the man since he didn't end up leaving right away. He stayed in the neighborhood for almost 20 minutes. According to one of my neighbors, after she heard the yelling she saw the man I described walk back up from my house to the sidewalk and hop into a truck with another man in the passenger seat, and they apparently just sat there staring at people walking by and being incredibly sketchy, and that's when she walked back towards my house and asked me what happened. Luckily she was able to give myself and the cop a description of the vehicle and the other man as well, so basically this was a very bizarre and uncomfortable experience and I wanted to share it to maybe see if anyone has ever experienced anything like this. Because honestly I'm still pretty shaken up and will be avoiding delivery apps for quite a while. So, strange Uber Eats driver who asked me for personal info and then proceeded to try and break in. Please let's not meet. Inappropriate Chinese delivery guy. When I was 14, my dad and I lived in a small studio apartment on Hollywood Beach in Florida. We didn't have hardly any money, but we treated ourselves to take out every other Thursday night from the same Chinese place a few blocks away. They were family run, so the same guy came to deliver the food every time. We found out later he was the adult son of the woman who owned the restaurant. It was my job every other Thursday to answer the door and pay for the food while my dad found something on TV for us to watch while we ate, and never once did this unassuming Asian guy ever give me a reason to feel uncomfortable. He was short and tan, with gray hair and glasses. I was friendly, but not talkative. At 14 I was still in my shy stage. We never had a conversation other than the typical hello and have a nice day. During that time I was left home alone a lot. Both my dad and I felt like 14 was old enough to spend a few hours home alone in the afternoons after school. I was also very close with the woman who lived next door and her goddaughter, so I would spend a lot of time over there when my dad wasn't home. I walked home from school as well. And it was one school day afternoon, an hour or so after I had gotten home, that the phone rang. This was about 2004, so having a house phone was still really common. Ours was set up on the side table in the main room of the studio apartment. I answered it and for a second I thought there was going to be no one on the other end because there was a long pause. Then a sort of stammering that I couldn't understand. Then, "This is Alan." Which was barely understandable because of the heavy Asian accent. I say Asian because I'm not sure if it's okay to assume they were Chinese just because they ran a Chinese restaurant. By now you obviously know that Alan is the Chinese delivery guy, but at this point 14-year-old me is confused. Who the hell is Alan? I say something along the lines of, what? And he clarifies, "Your delivery guy, Chinese delivery." Now I am even more confused. What does Alan the delivery guy want? He goes on, "Did you, order food?" "No. We did not." And I tell him so. He is quiet for another second or so. Then, Are you home alone?" My heart dropped into my stomach. Now, I'm pretty sure I know what Alan the delivery guy wants. And yes, I was home alone, but I wasn't about to let him know that. My first instinct was to tell him my dad was home, but his work van wasn't outside, and I realized that Alan had been to our house enough over the last few years to know my dad's van, and if he drove by he would know he wasn't home. My uncle is here, I say, and immediately think it's a horrible attempt at a lie, and Alan is going to know that. Why? I challenge him. He is quiet again for a moment, then a statement, not a question. You are home alone. I am stunned and have no idea what to say now. As I'm trying to think of something, never mind, he says, and hangs up. I am so weirded out and scared at this point that even though part of me thinks I actually scared him out of whatever he had planned, another part of me says go lock all the doors. So I do. Front and back. By the time I get back to the front room from locking the back door, I look out the front window and see a car parked in the driveway. It's Alan, just sitting in his car. The windows are rolled up and lightly tinted, but I can see him behind the steering wheel, just staring at my front door. 30 seconds later the house phone starts ringing again. I don't answer it. Alan stays parked in the driveway for about 5 more minutes. I stand looking out the window the whole time, thinking to myself that the second he got out of the car I was going to grab a knife from the kitchen. Such a dramatic young woman. The house phone starts to ring one last time. I don't answer it. As soon as it stops ringing the second time I pick it up and dial 911. I was terrified, but not because of Alan. I was afraid my dad was going to be angry with me for calling the police. It is a completely different story, but he and the law have not always been on the same side, and I was raised with a sort of subliminal aversion to the police and the idea that anything I couldn't handle myself my dad could handle for me. Alan drove away while I was on the phone with the 911 operator. I was in the middle of telling her he was calling the house and parked in the driveway, when he just put the car in reverse and speed down the street. The police took a statement from me when they got to my house, then sent me next door to hang out with the neighbor and her goddaughter. We sat on the front porch and I told her the story of what happened, while the officers went down to the restaurant to talk to Alan and contact my dad. In the end, Alan was able to get off with a warning by telling the officers that there was a confusion and that we had ordered food, which his mother confirmed. When asked why he wanted to know if I was home alone, he said he was trying to get an adult on the phone. The police told them that they will have to have someone else make deliveries to customers in my area from now on, and to make sure that Alan keeps his distance. In all honesty, I think it was my dad's phone call to the restaurant later that really made Alan realize he had fucked up, and not the warning from the cops. He was fuming when I told him the story, as I imagine most fathers would be. He called the restaurant and spoke to the woman who owned the place first, then somehow convinced her to put Alan on the phone. What followed was one of the greatest conversations I have ever heard, even if it was only my dad's side I was hearing. Nothing makes you feel more loved than your dad in macho protection mode. My dad threw insults that I had never heard before, and I was in middle school, a kingdom of insult connoisseurs. I knew it was a very serious situation, and I knew that my dad was really angry, but I was in the background stifling my laughter into a pillow. At one point my dad asked Alan what the fuck he was thinking driving over here, to which Alan responded something about being lonely, and my dad said, "If I ever catch you on this street again, Alan, if I even hear that you were near this street, I will make sure that you are lonely for the rest of your life by ripping your fucking dick off and choking you with it." We stopped eating Chinese after that.